Check everything. Perfect. Okay, I don't need to be in there. Shout out everybody tuning in. Let's do this thing. There we go. My picture's not looking great, but it'll be all right. Let's do this. Get these retweets up. Oh, I don't want to hear my voice. Sweet 16 is set. Ben, I am officially booked. I am going to Newark this week.
Love it. Just Eve was on board.
She was. So we're all booked. I got tickets just in case I don't get the press pass, so we are all good to go.
Nice.
Perfect. Let me go hit retweet on this stuff, and then we will be rocking and rolling.
I do think if I ever get to a point where it's a second weekend and Virginia and BYU are playing at the same site, back to back in the same region, I think I definitely have to go.
I know, and I did not want to fork up the money, but I had to. But anyhow,
you got to.
We'll talk about it. We'll get into it a little bit briefly. Shout out everybody. Hop in the chat, and let's do this thing. All righty. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. All right, you ready?
Yep, let's do it.
Let's do this. 3, 2, 1. We're live. We are live on X and the Karter Kast YouTube channel right now as we speak. Sunday night, the first weekend of the NCAA Tournament has wrapped up. Our Sweet 16 is set. And Ben, the round of 64 was fine. Wasn't the best, to be honest. Some good games, some not so good games. And then the round of 32 actually delivered in every way, in my opinion. Today was awesome. We finally got a buzzer beater, a game winner. Unfortunately, it went the opposite end. It wasn't the mid-major over the Power 5 team, but it was still an awesome buzzer beater and still an awesome day of hoops. And I would say this is an average tournament.
Yeah, no, it is. I do think it's just setting up to just continue being better and better as we go. Just a very strong second weekend slate of games. I would say, like, even if you just take out Maryland, Colorado State from the equation, it was just high competitive basketball. Like, not necessarily the madness outside of that Derek Queen game winner, obviously, but just high-level basketball. And I'm just not sure if you can ask for much else. And I think you're being kind of greedy if you're asking for more than that at this point.
Yeah, and we knew this coming into this year that the chalk would be more than ever, and that look. I didn't think it'd be this chalky. This is way more chalk than I thought it would be. But I mean, it is. Look, you look at the Sweet 16 right now. The Midwest 1, 2, 3, 4. You got the East region 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 4, 6. Like, everything has kind of been chalk outside of Arkansas right now. And weirdly enough, you can't picture John Calipari as being this fun mid-major darling kind of thing, even though he's had an incredible turnaround this season. And somehow they're sitting in the Sweet 16 at this point. But, it's the cute, fun stories are out of here. The big dogs are here. It's just big dog basketball now, and that's it.
Yeah, I think the closest thing to like the cute story is frankly BYU, but that sounds insulting because this BYU team's legit and deserves to be here. But I think if people are going to glom on to, hey, this is the team I want to continue making a run, I think from a national perspective, that team is BYU. It's either BYU or John Calipari. So I think it's definitely BYU in that case.
And I'm not sure, I don't have the numbers on me, but this is the first time I felt like in forever that there is 0 non-P5 teams in the Sweet 16. Everybody is P5. It's all P5 basketball in the Sweet 16 now. And let's dive into some of these games right now from the round of 32. Let's go to the top of the day. It kicks off with UConn, Florida. The first half of that game, basically all the way up until Walter Clayton started going off in the final 2 minutes, you go, oh no, this is bad news for Florida. This is really, really, really bad news for Florida. Dan Hurley has these guys rolling. They know what they're doing. All of a sudden, Florida was seeing ghosts. It was like watching Sam Darnold in a playoff game, to be honest. The ball wasn't bouncing their way. UConn was knocking down shots. And today, I understand Florida won. They only won by 2 or whatever. Today, I officially conceded. And the fact that UConn was even in that game at that point, Dan Hurley might just be the best coach in the country. They don't have that good a talent on this UConn team this year. I think they overachieved this season, to be honest, even winning one tournament game with the talent they had. I understand the preseason ranking of being number 3. That's all bull crap, if we're being honest, because we saw what this team was. And the fact they won a tournament game and almost upset what people think is the best team in the country at this point. Look, kudos to Dan Hurley and UConn. I hate the guy. I think he's an a-hole, but you can't argue it, man. He is such a good coach.
Yeah, because UConn honestly had control of this game throughout the entirety until there was 3 minutes left, 3 or 4 minutes left. And it wasn't because UConn was just shooting lights out. They're just controlling the tempo. They were just in control of that game. And Florida too, I hope this was kind of a wake-up call, because it almost feels like they had this idea in their head, okay, this is going to be a chalk tournament. We're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country. We don't really have to play the first weekend. So our goal is just to try to poster people and rip the freaking rim off the hoop. It just felt like they were just trying to dunk. And it was like, guys, come on, let's lock in here. But it was also just a reminder of just how insane Walter Clayton is. And really, we talked about it. Obviously, Dan Hurley is probably the best coach in the nation. He doesn't have otherworldly talent on this team, but he coached these guys up. He had them ready. They're dialed in, playing great basketball, had control of the game over a 1 seed. And really the difference in this game was, hey, Florida has Walter Clayton and UConn does not have a guy like Walter Clayton. I think that was my takeaway. But our integrity was on the line, because we've been talking about for months that UConn is not some scary team for a 1 seed or 2 seed. And I think I even told you a couple days ago that if someone says that UConn is, I said, quote unquote, if someone says they think UConn is a bad matchup for a 1 seed, that's an obvious way of being able to tell that they don't watch college basketball until March. And I was wrong. Hand up. I was 100% wrong. I think we need to know going forward that no matter what team Dan Hurley's trotting out there, they have a chance to beat you. Doesn't matter what team you have or how good you are.
And the other thing is, if you're a UConn fan, next season, it's almost the Bill Self, Dan Hurley thing where it's like, look, he got some bad apples in there, just didn't get enough talent. The second these dudes are going to get talent in their program and the right group of guys, they're going to be at the top of the top in college basketball once again. So I would be shocked if UConn isn't a top 4 seed in next year's tournament again, unless they just flat out don't have enough NIL money or dudes just don't want to play for Dan Hurley or something. But I'd imagine that wouldn't be the case. And on the Florida side, like you said, it was a wake-up call for them a little bit. And I know St. John's went down, but you look at their path now to the Final Four. Look, Maryland's not an easy matchup. I understand Maryland got stuck in a tough game against Colorado State today, but Maryland's ceiling can compete in a one-off game against Florida. That's not crazy. We saw what UConn just did today in Raleigh, and then you move on. Let's say Florida gets past Maryland. All of a sudden, Florida has Texas Tech they're probably looking at, and Texas Tech, I think, can knock off this Florida team. I actually think they match up decently well, and that's going to be an excellent game. These Sweet 16 Elite 8 games are going to be unbelievable, but Going back to this game today, UConn, Florida, I just want to say I was wrong. I was 100% wrong about Dan Hurley and this UConn team. I didn't think they had a chance in this world to keep this within single digits. And honestly, they blew the game today. It wasn't Florida. It was UConn choked the game away. Walter Clayton stepped up and was that guy that Cole Adams said he would be in this tournament. And he made some big-time shots after having a brutal game. And shout out Florida. They got it done. They ended up being the better team in the end. And I think Florida played probably a D-plus game today, and UConn played honestly about an A-, and it still wasn't enough to get past this Florida team. So let's move on. Next game in Raleigh, Duke versus Baylor. A lot to break down here. It was a tight one in Raleigh. Duke, Baylor. I mean, I was sweating this out the entire game. I was stressed out. I didn't think Duke was going to be able to get this one done, but Duke ends up winning this one in a very, very close one, 89-66. Oh, wait, that wasn't close, Ben. It was an absolute blowout. The second Duke went up 7 in that first half, it was competitive. It was dicey for about the first 12 minutes or so. And then eventually, it's like what we talked about. Duke's size overwhelmed Baylor. And then eventually, Baylor, since they're so much shorter, they just kept fouling Duke and fouling every single time they drove. And then that just opened up the three-point line for guys like Tyrese Proctor, who went nuclear today. And Baylor had no chance. 23-point win for Duke.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway is, right, Baylor for a majority of the season, I kind of gave Scott Drew crap for this, but he had Norchad Omir and Josh Ojonwuna. I have a hard time pronouncing the name, but you know who I'm talking about. The center who's actually like 6'10". And so I think the biggest problem was that their starting center was out with a knee injury. And then you look at it and it's like Norchad Omir, this undersized 5, who is awesome, by the way. Norchad Omir is awesome. I love watching that guy play. I've loved watching that guy play since he was at Miami on that Final Four run. They got him in foul trouble, and that was wraps.
Yep.
It was game over at that point. And I think he had like the first 6 points for like he kept Baylor in that game early. Once he had the foul trouble, he couldn't play as aggressively. And even if he hadn't gotten in foul trouble, I just don't think it was super sustainable, just due to just the size and the number of options that Duke could throw at him. I mean, they would have had Omir going like 35 minutes probably if he wasn't in foul trouble, if not more. And you have guys like Gongba, you have Malawach, you just have even Flag is dramatically taller than Norchad Omir. It was just going to be a problem. Just wore him down. Just not enough size, not enough horses for Baylor. Duke is a machine.
Yep, and on top of that, Tyrese Proctor being able to shoot like he did today. Look, that's not sustainable. He's not going to be able to shoot 7 of 8 from 3, 9 of 10 from the field. 25 points on 0 free throws in this game and only missing 1 total shot. But the thing is, it's okay, he's not going to go off like that, but okay, then it's going to be Con Knipples night. Oh, it's going to be Isaiah Evans night. Oh, yeah, by the way, Cooper Flag, he can go off for 40 on a given night. Oh, Mason Gillis, even he can go off for 15. He can hit 5 threes in a given night. There's just so many different ways they can beat you. One guy seems to always step up in these games no matter what, and they're a machine, man. Like you said, the second it got to a double-digit lead, you go, there's no shot. Baylor has no shot in this game, and Duke left no doubt. Duke dominates, and Duke moves on to the Sweet 16. We'll get into that a little bit later. Moving on, Illinois, Kentucky. This game honestly kind of disappointed a little bit. Kentucky got out to that lead and never really looked back. They win 84-75. This is a huge credit to Mark Pope and this team. Mark Pope and this Kentucky team have overachieved so much this season. The fact they were a 3 seed in this tournament, the fact that they've made the Sweet 16 and have the wins against teams like Duke and all those teams in the SEC that they beat with all the injuries they've dealt with, and the fact that they've gotten Lamont Butler healthy in this tournament has just been such a difference for them. Always playing unbelievable. Colin Chandler's coming off the bench playing big-time minutes for Kentucky. Mark Pope has done a masterclass job at Kentucky and getting them to the Sweet 16 throughout all the injuries and everything on a team I didn't even think was that great coming into this year. I think they've way overachieved this year. Credit to Mark Pope, credit to Kentucky. They're on to the Sweet 16. I think they have a great shot to make it to the Elite Eight, maybe even the Final Four.
Yeah, no, that was my takeaway as well, was really just the Mark Pope aspect of it. Just what he's doing with this roster. I mean, right, it's not completely devoid of talent. Like, they've got guys, but you don't really have just that one guy who's just going to overwhelm you, that one guy who's just an obvious star. But just they're well coached, they're very connected. Everyone knows their roles, they play them well, and just the puzzle pieces fit on this team right now. I think Lamont Butler, we definitely were wrong about the injury concerns. I mean, maybe that flares back up. Maybe we were right at some point in the second weekend, because usually when it comes to hamstring issues, that's just not going to go away during the season. But he's been playing great. I also like just the length and size that Kentucky has with Andrew Carr and Amari Williams in the starting lineup. Both can handle the ball some, both can move, both can really protect the rim. And like, just the fact that you have that length and that size along with the skill that comes with it, that makes them a problem. On the Illinois side, I mean, they just felt it was kind of an uninspiring performance from them. But I was really impressed with Kylan Boswell. I thought he really stepped up. But I just felt like Kentucky was just the better team. They're connected, and just they were the better coach team tonight.
Yeah, they were the better coach team. They had way more chemistry, and they had a better plan coming into this game. When you watch an Illinois coach team as of recent, Brad Underwood teams, they usually have a ton of talent, but it feels like there's no plan going into these games. It's almost like an Eric Musselman-led team as well, where Eric Musselman goes into a game, they want to make this, they want to make it chaos, and if they're knocking down threes, they look like the most unstoppable team in the country, and if they don't, they look like the easiest team to beat in the country, and that was the case today. Kentucky just overwhelmed them, and shout out Mark Pope in Kentucky. They're moving on. We'll get into their game against Tennessee a little bit later. St. Mary's, Alabama. There's really not much to break down in this game. Alabama had better players, better talent. They played their pace in this game, and St. Mary's tried. They hung around. That game felt like it was stuck at an 8-point margin the entire time, and Alabama just, look, they dominated the pace, and the St. Mary's just couldn't handle it at the end of the day, and St. Mary's could not get enough stops because Alabama was getting them out of everything they wanted to do in this spot. This was game of the millennium for us. Alabama -5 felt like the easiest play of all time. Alabama moves on to the Sweet 16 with a date with BYU. This game wasn't even for an ounce in doubt in my mind.
No, I mean, even though St. Mary's kind of hung in this one, you just knew what the inevitable was. I think not only was Alabama going to obviously control the pace like they did, I think that was something we knew going into this game, but just the fact that Alabama's going 10 deep, that just makes it just impossible for a team like St. Mary's when Alabama could go that deep with just guys who are just more talented than St. Mary's. I mean, kudos to Randy Bennett for getting this team where they're at. Aiden Mahaney, Josh Jefferson, those two guys going to Iowa State and UConn, it felt like they were going to drop off a ton, but they won 2 out of 3 against Gonzaga. They were a 7 seed, got a win in the NCAA tournament. That's a win for Randy Bennett. But when it comes to St. Mary's, almost every year, it's sort of the same story. Fundamentally sound team. They're very connected, but when it comes to the actual talent, when they play a team that's a 1, 2, 3 seed that's competing for a national championship, that's competing to go to the Final Four, they're just not going to have the horses to hang in and compete with them.
Yeah, that was a matter of fact. And look, they have to play that weird style. And we saw what happened to Drake and against Texas Tech. Like, eventually when you play against these teams with just much better athletes and much more talented players, you have to play a perfect game, and they have to play their worst game possible to upset them. And I just don't like taking those teams in March that play super slow. And then on top of that, if you're going to play slow and muck it up, you got to be physical, and they're just not a super physical team on top of that. So Alabama moves on against Kentucky, and moving on, this was game of the day. This was the game of the weekend, game of the tournament so far. Colorado State versus Maryland. We finally got a buzzer beater. Derek Queen at the buzzer. Controversy around him with the travel at the buzzer, but shout out Jalen Lake for making that 3-point shot. That was a ballsy shot, cold shot, down 2. You knock down that 3 to make it 71-70. And then, look, your heart gets ripped out when Derek Queen hits that baseline float or baseline fadeaway at the very end. And shout out to Maryland. Shout out Colorado State. This was easily the best game of the day. But, man, what a massive wake-up call for Maryland. They barely get out alive. And I think people are going to be kind of down on Maryland coming out of this one. And to be honest, I feel exactly the same about them. They're a roller coaster team. The fact that when they're on the downward trend against a team like Colorado State and they somehow got out alive, man, I think anything's possible with this Maryland team going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, you see a lot of references on Twitter to Maryland fans kind of referring to their guys as the Fab Five. I mean, you just look at this. Everyone in the starting 5 had at least 11 points. That's just very impressive. I do think when you get into the second games of a weekend in which there's just such intense high-stakes basketball, I do think you're going to get almost not the sharpest version of Maryland because I do think they get tired in these spots. I do think that's why it's massive that they were able to just kind of squeak by and get away with the performance they had today, because I do think just these few days of rest are just going to be massive for them going into this Florida game. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was brilliant giving the ball to Derek Queen in space. Just the fact that he was able, at his size, just as nimble as he was there, to be able to get a shot. And that's a weird angle that he was shooting the ball from. And to be able to hit that, just very impressive. I was also very impressed with Colorado State. That shot from Lake was fantastic. Nick Clifford's awesome. Nico Medved, Minnesota's getting a great coach. Minnesota's not a very well-financed Power 5 program right now. There's a lot of issues with that job, but Nico Medved just gave it his best shot here, and it was an awesome game.
It was
just awesome. Great.
Yeah, it's one we deserved after some not so fun finishes at the end of these games. Tons and tons of replays and fouls. I'm so sick of watching teams go to the monitor and have to go to these timeouts, and then there's these timeouts because we did it tip off his finger. And then on top of that, it's just fouling up 3. Yeah, let's review it. Let's review it. We know the call, but let's review it. No, every single time. And there's got to be a better process for this stuff. It's out of control. But this game with Maryland, I think that's a great point you mentioned with the Crab 5, that they don't have a ton of depth on this team. And I think that's something to look for. Let's say they go in and they upset Florida. That game is going to take everything out of them. On top of that, they're playing these games in Seattle right now. They're likely going to probably fly back to Maryland, and they're going to be staying in Maryland in College Park all the way across the country for the next couple days potentially, and then they might have to fly all the way back to San Francisco where their region is. I would hope they just stay on the West Coast, but even then, that's another added thing of these guys won't have been home for 8-9 days at that point. They haven't slept in their own beds. They're in hotel rooms at this point. Yeah, it's nice hotel rooms, don't get me wrong, but I think they would be crazy to go back to Maryland, and they got to stay on the West Coast. And if they beat Florida, that's going to be a dogfight game, up and down, a ton of energy used. And then all of a sudden, you're going to have to go into a dogfight against Texas Tech less than 48 hours later. So I think that is going to be a fascinating thing to look at. And to be honest, if Maryland gets the upset over Florida and ends up being Maryland versus Texas Tech, I love Texas Tech in that matchup.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we see Maryland end up pulling off a really kind of, I don't want to say shocking, but like very surprising victory against Florida, immediately once Texas Tech or Arkansas wins that game, especially Texas Tech, I'd be hammering Texas Tech with the spread there. I just think this Maryland team, just the way things are set up, you said playing out West, playing the second or probably the second best team in this entire tournament, even if they're able to win that game, I just think that would just take just all the fuel out of that tank for them. And I think they'd be in a bad position for the Elite Eight. But I mean, a Sweet 16 appearance with this group it's a success for Maryland.
Yeah, 100%. And I really think they can compete with Florida in a one-off game, but man, once they have to go 48 hours next and have to play Texas Tech, most likely that'll be different. But maybe they get to play Arkansas, and they can definitely do that even on short rest. But Ole Miss, Iowa State, Ole Miss wins 91-78, and this is the least talked about story in this tournament, the least talked about team in this tournament, in my opinion, that they go play against Carolina. They almost choked that game, almost blew that game away, but then they just shoot the lights out against them, pull that one out, and they go into Iowa State, and they kick the absolute crap out of Iowa State in this game. I understand Keyshawn Gilbert's out. They've dealt with injuries and whatnot, but the story in this game, I don't look Iowa State, whatever. The injuries, yes, I understand that's a big thing, but Ole Miss is playing some of their best ball at the right time, and they have one of the best coaches in the country. Man, if you're looking at Ole Miss versus Michigan State in the Sweet 16, I really like Ole Miss in that matchup.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. When we did our bracket, I actually did have Ole Miss over Iowa State in the spot. I stuck with that last night when we recorded and went live as well. I was very impressed because Ole Miss, right? They're not a very big team. I think Iowa State came into this matchup, especially without Gilbert, thinking, okay, we'll play a bigger lineup. We'll put out Deshaun Jackson. We'll have Jefferson at the 4, Momcilovic, who is kind of a long, tall 3, not very imposing, but a good shooter, can shoot over most threes that teams are going to have. And I think they thought that size advantage was going to work for him. Really didn't. Momcilovic shot the ball dreadfully, 1 for 8 from 3. And Josh Jefferson was fine. But outside of that, it was just Curtis Jones. It was sort of the same team that we saw in the Big 12 tournament when they lost to BYU. And so it just felt like they had to ride him, whereas Ole Miss just had a fantastic shooting night, shooting over 50% from 3, but they just had I think it worked in their advantage that they were smaller. I think that created mismatches against this Iowa State team, and it allowed for different guys to score. You had Sean Padula kind of leading the way, but you also had Brakefield, Matthew Morrell, Malik Dia had a great game as well. Jalen Murray, who I'm a big fan of, had 11 points. It was a fantastic game from Ole Miss. I'm very impressed with them because that UNC win wasn't an easy one either. I do think they match up very well against Michigan State. We'll see what happens, but
yeah, I think they do match up quite well, and we'll get into we'll do a really brief Sweet 16 walkthrough here in a minute, and then we'll do a preview show this week as well. But let's move on. I think that's enough on that game, to be honest. Michigan State versus New Mexico. We thought New Mexico was going to be able to pull off the upset here, and they just ran out of gas by the end. Michigan State gets it done again. Great coaching job by Tom Izzo in this game. And look, New Mexico just didn't have the dogs in the end. Donovan Dent played okay, played fine in this spot. This game was frustrating if you're hoping for the upset, because every single time New Mexico had the chance to take a lead in this game, go up, change the momentum in this spot, they would just poop down their own leg, man, and they just pooped their pants and couldn't get anything going. New Mexico doesn't move on. Michigan State, Tom Izzo, this team, man, another shout out, because Mark Pope, just like Mark Pope, man, this team has overachieved so much, and I keep doubting them. I even doubted them somewhat against Bryant, Ben. This team just keeps proving me wrong, and I still like Ole Miss in that matchup against Michigan State, and I fully expect Tom Izzo and this team to prove me wrong once again.
Yeah, I mean, just watching this game, when it came to New Mexico, I think it was a little frustrating because that was a reservation I had with them going to the tournament, was being a non-Power 5 team that liked to push the ball to the degree that they did, or that they do. But the fact that they don't attempt and make as many threes as you'd really like them to in order to beat a team like Michigan State, especially like New Mexico plays a high-tempo brand of basketball with Richard Pitino, Donovan Dent kind of leading the way, pushing the pace. But Michigan State's more than happy to play that game. Although they don't have imposing size, they rebound the ball really well. They're connected, and it just sort of felt like, okay, we're not getting New Mexico's A game today, and the fact that they can't take advantage of the fact that Michigan State can't shoot from three. It just felt like New Mexico needed to hit like twice as many threes as Michigan State. Michigan State had 4 threes as a team. New Mexico had 4 as well. It felt like, right, the game's a lot different if they have 7 or 8. That's just not the kind of brand of basketball that New Mexico plays. And that's where I think the style of basketball worked against them a little bit and kind of played into what Izzo wanted in this game. He's like, okay, we'll run up and down with you. I feel confident that we've got the rebounding, we've got the athletes, we've got the depth to overcome what feels kind of like there's just a few top-heavy guys on this New Mexico team, Nelly Joseph, Donovan Dent, True Washington, etc.
Yeah, well, my biggest problem with New Mexico in this game is that they didn't take advantage of a guy like Jace Richardson going 1 for 10, having maybe one of his worst games of his entire season, and they took no advantage of that in this spot. And New Mexico had that there for the taking. Like you said, Michigan State couldn't hit a thing in this game. Did not matter. New Mexico could not take advantage of that. Honestly, really disappointed in the Lobos, but they get their first win in the tournament since 2012. Successful season for them. We'll see if Patina is still there. Oregon, Arizona, the nightcap. Oregon 83, Arizona 87. Caleb Love had an unbelievable tournament game. And look, I'm getting PTSD, man. We can just roll right into it right after this, but Oregon, man, it's just so frustrating watching that team. And it's tough because you want to take the easy 2 in these games, but the fact that these teams foul up 3 every time, I understand you're usually going to end up taking a contested 3 with 10 to 15 seconds left when you're down 3. I think you got to stop taking the quick 2 in these spots. If your guards are hitting threes like they were in this game, I think you got to just take that contested 3, because if you're going to foul up 3, it's a death sentence. You cannot win that game. Your percentage chance of winning that game when you foul up 3 against a really good free throw shooting team, especially in the clutch like Arizona is, it's just a recipe for disaster. And I think Dana Altman, unfortunately, he didn't have a timeout there, but you got to take that 3 right there. And I know hindsight's 2020, but that was the difference in the end of this game, because Arizona fouled up 3, made all their free throws at the end, and Oregon literally had 0 chance to win this game at that point.
Yeah, I mean, us and a few buddies were kind of having this discussion where someone we know was like, hey, I don't know if he should have taken the 2 there. And I was thinking to myself, well, the defense is giving you that. So it's just an easy 2 points to cut it down to 1. Like, you got to do that. And then just sort of as the game, that last minute sort of transpired, I realized I was like, oh, that's what Arizona wanted all along. They really were baiting Oregon, really baiting Shellstad into just getting that easy 2 because they're like, okay, we'll hit our free throws, getting the double bonus eventually, and we're just going to foul up 3. There's going to be nothing you can do about it. It was honestly masterful coaching by Tommy Lloyd and just very good situational basketball by Arizona. It was kind of a bummer because I think it kind of dampened what could have been a fantastic ending there, kind of anticlimactic a little bit. But it was just smart basketball situationally. It felt like that play was really what won Arizona the game. Especially like when it comes to taking a 3, if you're just kind of in rhythm, like Shellstad just comes down the court in rhythm, pulls up from 3, like there's not a ton that the defense can do about it. It's not an easy shot, but you can drain that, and there's not a ton the defense can do about that. So for me, it was definitely hindsight because I actually liked getting that basket at the time. But it proved that Arizona knew what they were doing. Tommy Lloyd knew what he was doing. That lost them the game pretty much.
Yeah, 100%. And because I'm not saying it needs to be this consistent thing of you need to take the 3, you need to foul up 3, whatever. It's solely dependent on your team. If you have a young, inexperienced team and they're not super locked in from the free throw line, they're not a great free throw shooting team, I don't think you can foul up 3. And I think if you're the opposing team on a team like that, you take the quick 2. But if you've done your homework, Arizona at the end of these clutch games, do not miss free throws. Caleb Love, say what you want about him. He's up and down. Don't get me wrong. But the one constant with Caleb Love is if he's at the free throw line at the end of a game, I would almost bet my house that he's making it. That dude is stone cold in the clutch usually, and especially at the free throw line. Sometimes he takes dumb threes, but that's different. But at the free throw line, Tommy Lloyd, like you said, masterful coaching job, and credit to Arizona. They move on. I thought, as a Duke fan, I really wanted Oregon to win that game because I don't want to play Caleb Love again. I really don't.
Yeah, no, I understand the Caleb Love PTSD, and it's valid, especially with just how fantastic he was in this game, to be honest. We got the best version of Caleb Love. But I also wanted to add, not only is it masterful coaching by Tommy Lloyd, but it shows how much trust he has in his players, not only to go up there and sink basically all of those critical free throws, but it also takes a lot of trust in your team to foul up three, because that could go very wrong. I mean, we saw Caleb Love go in and foul Shellstad, who tried to sell taking a half-court shot. Didn't work. But look, if you foul a half a second later, Shellstad could tie the game up there. So it was great trust that Tommy Lloyd had in his players. And not only that, but great execution. I was very impressed with Arizona down the stretch there.
Yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about the Sweet 16. Sweet 16 set. Like I said, it's all Power 5 teams in this thing. And let's go through it chronologically. Ben, have you seen the lines for these games yet?
Not yet, no.
So BYU, Alabama, what's the line?
Alabama -4.5.
Yep.
I got it. Oh, nice.
Yeah. BYU, Alabama -4.5. The over-under's at 174.5 in this one. And initial thoughts, this is going to be the best game of the Sweet 16. And I know you can say, oh, you're biased, you're a BYU guy, whatever. This is going to be the most high-level basketball played back and forth. And it's going to look like an NBA-style game. It's going to be up and down. Maybe 53s are shot in this game. And it's going to be like 4 or 5 shots per minute be getting put up in this game. And I'm very, very excited for this one. I'll be in the building. I don't know if I'll have a press pass or not. We'll find out. So just very excited. And I don't know how to feel about this one yet, Ben. I need to watch some more film on Alabama, even though I've watched a ton of them this season. I think that I like BYU with the points there, but if Alabama pushes this into a back and forth game, can BYU hang with them shooting wise? And I think they can, but it almost feels just more like a coin flip game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do think, I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about really the way to kind of throw off this Alabama team. I think obviously we talk about how this is just going to be an absolute chess match on the offensive side of the court. When it comes to Nate Oates, when it comes to Kevin Young, both teams want to play super fast. They have very elaborate schemes that allow for easy shots, open threes, easy buckets at the basket, lob threats. It's going to be fantastic offensive basketball, but I think just sort of the key to this game is going to be who can get the advantage defensively. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Keba Keita on BYU's side. I think you're going to really have to have him sort of funnel guys out of the lane or be able to really protect the rim when guys like Mark Sears or Phylon get downhill, Youngblood as well. How is he as a rim protector in this game? I think that'll determine a lot. And when it comes to the perimeter players, just making sure that they're just not letting guys get by him. We know what Alabama wants to do. They want to shoot threes. They want to get easy baskets. You just need to play defense in a way that just forces them to take mid-range shots because they won't do it. So you just got to contest close to the basket. You got to protect the rim, and you got to close out and just make life difficult for the shooters out the perimeter. If you do that, I think that's the way that you can beat Alabama. So I think that'll just sort of be the key to the game is which of these teams locks in defensively and has the advantage there, because I think we know what to expect from both of these offenses. And although these defenses aren't strengths for either of these teams, I think you know that both sides are going to be locked in for this one, knowing the task that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on here, Florida, Maryland. So that's the first game that tips off the Sweet 16. So first game, 7 p.m. CBS tip-off in Newark, New Jersey is going to be BYU versus Alabama. And then Florida, Maryland will start about a half hour after that. Florida is a 6.5-point favorite in this game. like I said, it's going to be up and down. I'm so excited to see how Maryland combats these Florida bigs and Derek Queen. Can Maryland's depth uphold? Can Walter Clayton continue to be that guy in this tournament, which I absolutely think he can? And that's going to be fascinating to see. Moving on, Arkansas, Texas Tech is the one right after that. Texas Tech is a 5.5-point favorite. The over-under is at 146.5 in this one. Is Texas Tech on upset watch, or is just Arkansas just getting lucky at this point? Have they just played the perfect teams that fit their style, or are they a live dog here?
I don't think so. I like Texas Tech here. Especially, I don't really know the injury situation with Chance McMillan. If they're able to get him back, I really like Texas Tech here. I just think I think St. John's was a good matchup, honestly, for Arkansas, because St. John's wants to play that kind of like loose street ball style of basketball that with the athletes and skill level that Arkansas has, they were more than happy to do that. They had the length to disrupt these St. John's guys when it comes to being like finishing around the rim. So I'm just very interested to see this game, but I do think Texas Tech, I think they're not going to fall into the trap of kind of playing this ugly style of basketball. I think they kind of dictate the way this game's played. And I think for that reason, they're going to be able to get the win.
Yeah, I'm curious here. We'll break it down more on our Sweet 16 pod later this week. But Arizona Duke is the game after BYU Alabama. Duke minus 9.5 in this one. Over under 152.5. Whew. Whew. That is a lot of points against Caleb Love and this Arizona team. I know Duke went in and they beat Arizona in the McKale Center by double digits earlier this season in a weird kind of slow, gross, muck-it-up game, which isn't going to be the case again in this one. That is a lot of points. I am nervous as a Duke fan. I am nervous Caleb Love goes off for 45 points in this game. And to give the listeners a little, inside Karter Kast here, the last 3 games I've attended, 4 games that I've attended that Caleb Love has played in. The most recent one was in the McKale Center, BYU, Arizona. He goes off for like 30 in that game. Felt like he didn't miss a shot. BYU somehow got the win. Okay, I saw him play in Provo at the Marriott Center. I think he had like 25, 30 in that one. He played out of his mind, and Arizona wins that game against BYU. Before that, Caleb Love in the Kansas title game, and we all know how that went with Carolina. Blew the biggest halftime lead ever, Ben. By the way, in the NCAA Tournament title game, Carolina, Hubert Davis, Caleb Love, they blew the biggest halftime lead ever. I don't know if you knew that. I don't know if the listeners knew that, but they did blow the biggest halftime lead of all time in the NCAA Tournament title game. Like, of all time, Ben. Like, in the history of NCAA Tournament title games, Hubert Davis and the North Carolina Tar Heels blew the biggest lead ever. They did that. Biggest? That was them. The biggest. The greatest.
Wow. Okay.
The biggest. Wow. Huge. And then Saturday at the Final Four, Caleb Love ripped my heart out and ended Coach K's career, and I'll never forgive him for that. And I will be in person for this one, Ben, and Caleb Love just goes bananas every time I'm in person. He looks over and he says, "Oh, that fat idiot's here? Oh, no. Oh, no, it's bad news. It's bad." You know when you're playing pickup and you see who's guarding you, you go, "Oh, man, I'm about to cook today. I'm about to cook today." Or like, when Jordan Poole walks into a game and he sees just some Instagram models sitting courtside and he goes, "This is my day. This is my day. I didn't know you were showing up. This is my day." That's Caleb Love with me. Somehow, some way, his spidey sense knows that I'm in the building and he's going to go bananas. And I'm extremely nervous about this game. But 9.5-point spread. We'll see. Let's move on. Let's quickly do these and we'll get out of here. And we'll do our preview this week, like I said. Ole Miss, Michigan State. Michigan State's a 2.5-point favorite in this one. Over under 143.5. Look, we talked about it. I think I like Ole Miss in this spot. I want to break it down a little bit more when we do our preview show. Any initial thoughts on this one, Ben?
Yeah, my initial thoughts, I kind of mentioned it when we talked about the Ole Miss game and the Michigan State game. My initial thought is liking Ole Miss, but I do think this is something where I want to go to the drawing board, just kind of see if I still feel that way. But I keep doubting Tom Izzo. Actually, I had him in the Final Four, but you do watch him. I think when it comes to Michigan State, I think my biggest fear is I just watched St. John's go down, and I could see that happening to Michigan State at really any time. That's my biggest concern for Michigan State. But yeah, it should be an interesting game. What's the line on that one?
2.5 Michigan State.
Okay, that sounds about right. I think I like Ole Miss money line in that spot, but don't feel like maybe 65 to 70% confidence there.
Kentucky, Tennessee, SEC matchup, rematch. We've seen this game throughout the season as well. Tennessee minus 4.5 in this game, over under 146.5. I think this game's fascinating, Ben. I don't know where I would go in this game. Well, like I said, once again, we'll break it down. Sweet 16 preview. Go subscribe. Go check that out when it's out this week, probably on Tuesday. So subscribe at Karter Kast on everything. But Tennessee minus 4.5 in this game. Tennessee, look, Wofford, that game was irrelevant. Who cares about that one? UCLA, that team was just not that good. And also, they play a little bit of that Tennessee style, and Tennessee just plays that in a way better way. This is completely contrasting styles here, and I think this all comes down to officiating in this game. And I know that's a lame answer, but if they're letting them play a little bit, Tennessee's winning this ball game. Tennessee's going to bully them. Tennessee's going to get Kentucky off their spots and play a more physical style game. If this game is being called tight like Kentucky wants it, Kentucky's winning this ball game. No questions asked, I think. Because if Tennessee gets into foul trouble, I don't think Tennessee's offense is going to be able to keep up unless Chaz Linear goes bananas.
Yeah, that's my initial reaction as well. I mean, we know Kentucky wants to play more of a finesse, fast-paced, putting up a lot of threes style of basketball, whereas Tennessee is just a team that wants to muck it up. They just want to beat you up. They want to get in your grill. They want to rattle you. And I think if that is something that is allowed, Tennessee should be able to match up really well against Kentucky. But if Kentucky ends up shooting 25 to 30 free throws, then obviously it swings the other way.
Michigan, Auburn. Auburn's a 7.5-point favorite in this game. I am fascinated to dive into the tape a little bit more and break down this matchup because Jani Broome versus these two 7-footers. And off the top of my head, I feel like Michigan is just so different than what everybody has seen this year with two bigs that can kind of handle the ball a little bit, especially Danny Wolf. And, their guards have stepped up in a major way, especially Donaldson. And so it's just so different when you play this Michigan team. And that has been a huge advantage for them in this tournament because these teams, I don't know how to really prepare for these 7-footers because also you're trying to do these scout teams in practice. How do you prepare for two 7-footers that are playing a pick and roll?
Yeah, exactly. And we know how Danny Wolf does in tournament games against Auburn.
Yep. Yeah, I forgot about that. Well, he didn't play that well last time.
No, he actually didn't. I was more just kidding. But honestly, this is one where I think whatever happens, it's going to be extreme. I think either Danny Wolf and Golden, that either works and they win by 7 points. Donaldson, Roddy Gale was a big part of their success against Texas A&M. He had the game of his season. But I can also see a scenario in which they kind of lock in on Wolf and Golden. They're a little physical, and just the guards for Auburn just dominate Michigan's guards. I think that is stuck in my that is you could see Auburn winning by 15 just because Pettiford, Kelly, Denver Jones just outplay Donaldson, Roddy Gale.
Yeah, and that's my thing in this game. I don't want to bet against Pettiford and Miles Kelly in this spot, especially because I don't think we've seen anywhere near Miles Kelly's best so far in this tournament, and we've seen Tahad Pettiford ball out, especially in that last game against Creighton. And this dude just gets up for big games. It doesn't matter who it is. He's not scared of anyone, and I don't want to bet against Tahad Pettiford going on. Quickly, let's wrap up here. Purdue, Houston. Houston is a 7.5-point favorite here. Quick question, and we'll get out of here. Does Purdue have a chance to beat Houston in your mind, yes or no?
Not really.
I don't think so either.
Yeah. I also, one last thought. We'll get into the Sweet 16 previews this week, but looking at how things have gone this season, I think we're going to get the second 4-1 seed Final Four.
You're saying all 1 seeds.
I think that's going to happen because I do think Auburn's To me, I felt like Creighton or Louisville was the best shot of beating Auburn. That might be insulting to some of these other teams, but I truly think that was the spot. And I'm just not sure if Michigan is really going to match up well. It's hard to tell with those 2 7-footers. And then on the other side with Ole Miss and Michigan State, Michigan State doesn't have the horses. Ole Miss, I don't think, does either, but we'll see.
Yeah, and then if I'll ask this, okay, quick question real quick then. Who's the rephrase that? Come on. We're live right now. I can't mess up right now. Can't edit this stuff out. Who is the number 1 seed that you think could lose first in this tournament? Because my guess would be Houston.
It's tough.
And that's only if they play Tennessee in the Elite Eight.
It's not. I mean, I think looking at
Florida?
these matchups.
Bama over Duke?
Shoot, man. I guess I'll stick with all. It contradicts everything I just said, but I guess still Auburn. Really, maybe it was an exaggeration to say that Creighton or Louisville was going to be the toughest spot for them. But I do think if they beat Michigan and get to the Elite Eight, I feel like they're just going to win the region. I don't know if you agree, but.
I would lean towards that. Yeah, I think Chris Beard and Ole Miss might give them a fight, but we saw that game during the regular season. I think it's Florida that's probably has the worst shot or the best shot at losing, to be honest, because
of the matchups they have to go, just because of the teams they have to go against.
Yeah, because I think Maryland in a one-off game could maybe take down Florida. I think Texas Tech in a one-off game could take down Florida. And then, Golden hasn't had a ton of experience in the tournament. These are his first 2 tournament wins so far. And so you're going against really, really good coaches on the other side. Maybe them, but honestly, I think it would be Tennessee versus Houston, and I don't feel confident in that at all. It really feels like we're getting to an 08 Final Four. Duke Bama, I think, is fascinating still. I don't care what anybody says. I think Bama can absolutely beat Duke as well, though.
Yeah, Bama can beat anyone, but they can also lose to anybody as well.
And the last thing I want to touch on, shout out Mike Rutherford for this tweet. He tweeted out the duality of man, and the first picture is he's in an interview with Dana Jacobson or Tracy Wolfson after the game, and said there's an honor in the way we went out, and he's crying after, and he's all emotional and being cute and whatnot. And then the next tweet is from Joey Ellis from the tunnel in Raleigh, and he's tweeting out, I hope they don't F you like they F'd us, Baylor. I really hope they don't. Dan Hurley to Baylor walking off the floor after a slugfest loss to top seed Florida. Likely talking about officiating, if I had to guess, from Joey Ellis on Twitter. F Dan Hurley. This is the shtick is just getting so old. And I know he's just trying to set himself up to be the next Coach K, and he's doing it well because we're talking about him right now after a loss. But just seeing this stuff, dude, just F this guy, man. He's so annoying. And then UConn fans and people are like, oh, well, he's cute for the sport. He's great for the sport. He's also just a blatant a-hole, and he's a phony and just, oh no, he's not a phony. He is who he is. And then one person, he's crying and stuff, and the next person, he's like, F you, F you, F you. I'm just so sick of his shtick, dude.
It's just nothing's authentic.
And at the same time, it is authentic in a way. People feel he's super authentic in that way.
Yeah, everything he does, both the crying and the refs comment going to the tunnel, they both invoke an eye roll reaction for me.
Yeah.
It's just, and you talked about him wanting to be the next Coach K. Coach K was just Coach K. He was just who he was. Obviously, I'm not a Coach K guy at all. Can't stand Coach K. But it reminds me of how Michael Jordan was kind of like a new breed of himself. He was just he's just who he was. And then Kobe Bryant was just doing everything he could just to copy Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? He was like like he was like Mamba mentality. Mamba mentality is really just what MJ was. It feels like Dan Hurley's trying to kind of pull the same thing in a weird way, where he's like just trying to copy Coach K, but in a way that's just not authentic at all. It's just an exaggerated version.
That is the quote of the year, is that Mamba mentality is just copying MJ.
It is.
You are going to get crucified for that one, Ben.
I don't care. It's true.
Okay, I'm warning you, man. These Kobe fans, they are no joke. I said one time that Curry is above Kobe in the NBA all-time rankings. I had about 15 DMs calling me the worst names I've ever heard in the world. Just, I'm warning you, but I'm dying here. Holy crap. I'm having a cough for 3 weeks
I think
now.
you get my point, though.
No, I'm not disagreeing, but I'm just warning you. Real quick, let's get out of here. I don't know who this is. This is what's going on, fellas. Hope y'all are well. Best regards, Barry. Shout out Barry McCockiner in the chat. And then lastly, Jack Carpenter said, sorry, fellas, I'm late to this one. Have we already discussed Karter cheering for Dan Hurley? I was cheering for Dan Hurley in the upset solely because of one reason. If Florida's out of this tournament, I feel much, much, much better about Duke and BYU potentially making a title game and winning, because I think once they play, maybe Duke or BYU against anybody else in the country. BYU Houston is a disaster matchup. But if Florida goes down before the title game, I feel great about Duke. I feel great about Duke against almost anybody except Caleb Love, weirdly enough. And then last chat for the stream, and then we'll get out of here. Jack said, Ben, MJ never said, are you a different animal in the same beast Mamba mentality?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to apologize for what I said, but I know. I was really trying to make a Dan Hurley point, and I know it's just going to turn into like a Kobe thing. And you know what? Whatever. I just won't check the comments. I don't care.
All right. Anyhow. All right. That does it for us. Subscribe at CarterCast on everything, at CarterBA, at BD Hammond 28. Download SeatGeek. Use code CarterCast. $20 off your first purchase. $50 minimum purchase required. Sweet 16 preview will be out. And then different schedule coming for this week with live reaction stuff. I will be in Newark, New Jersey, and New York City. So I'll keep you guys posted on what the plan is for that. And we will get podcasts out to you some way, somehow. And I will be live on Church Ball stuff this week as well, breaking down the BYU Bama game and doing some interviews on there as well. So go check that out at CarterCast on everything. Leave a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And we'll see you guys on Tuesday for a Sweet 16 preview. And also, before we go, hit that button right there. Hit that button, Ben. Hit the subscribe button right there. Let's do this. Anyhow, we'll see y'all next time. Adios. Bye.